Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Madrid Mooks. My name is Sim. Along with me are my co-hosts, Sheikh Amir, Mahin, and Mort. How y'all doing this evening? We have a special episode for you guys. But before we get started, make sure you click on like and leave a comment below in the comment section before you get the show. Before you leave the show. Uh, Guys, we had an excellent episode that we just did with Hotep Jesus. A lot of feedback on it, a lot of controversy. People had a lot to say. They said that uh, there was a lot left on the table that we could have had a discussion with, and for that reason, we brought Sheikh Abdullah bin Hamid Ali. Welcome back to the show, Sheikh. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. How you guys doing?
Good, alhamdulillah.
Always good to see your face, brother.
Yeah, same here. Yes. Is it windy in the windy city?
It's actually very windy
today. Yeah, it was windy today.
My garbage flew all over the farm that I recently acquired and purchased. It's
Oh, really?
yeah. It went all the way into the neighbor's lawn. I was walking great distances to pick up all the trash that flew into my new neighbor's lawn. It's just
Your farm, huh?
yeah.
He calls it the farm. I don't know.
It's the beginning of a farmland, so
Inshallah,
it's
inshallah.
pretty much a
Inshallah.
farm.
It's on the edge of a farm.
We have horses. My neighbors have horses, so it counts.
Inshallah. Yeah.
When you have neighbors who have horses and ponies and chicken coops, it's pretty much a farmland.
Pretty much is. You're right.
Plus, your home is like kind of that wooded cabin
Yeah.
feel to it.
Yeah.
Have you ever stayed in like Yellowstone National? Was it Yellowstone National Park?
Mm.
It has that kind of vibe to it.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
smoking.
What part of Chicago you stay in?
We call it West Chicago.
Yeah, in West. Okay, West Chicago.
West Chicago. It's just the name of the city. It's not actually like a big city.
So it's about 45 minutes from downtown.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you were joking for a second.
No. Most people think I'm kidding when I told them I bought this place that is pretty much the beginning of farmland.
Inshallah.
Yeah.
He's got plans.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, inshallah. Allah bless your new acquisition and increase it and protect it.
I mean,
So Sheikh, I want to, I just want to let's put on your court first. I know you were actually texting me during the show. I know you caught some of it. I don't know if you had a chance to catch the entire episode. But initially, just what are your thoughts on the Hotep movement? If you had any prior, and then kind of what initial takeaway from the episode we did.
Well, I mean, the movement itself, I mean, I can't speak authoritatively about it because I haven't really taken the time to look deeper into it, but it does sound like seeing things that I'm familiar with respect to like Pan-Africanism in general. It was a very good episode. I mean, I accidentally came across it. I mean, I typically don't get the opportunity to listen to you guys and a lot of other people as well, and I just, but I use YouTube quite a bit, and I happened to open up my app, and then you guys were on, and so I started to listen to this guy. So this guy, Hotep Jesus, and I heard of him. I know that people would like sort of tag me on Twitter and say, maybe if you talk to him and things. And so, I listened, and I was really impressed with his temperament. With his articulation of things, his mastery of certain issues with respect to the economic system and sort of and I really liked overall the sort of issues that he seemed to be passionate about, and I don't know if that is a personal issue, or rather it's a communal sort of thing with them, the Hotep movement overall, with respect to trying to push a lot of people into the direction of what is most useful right now in terms of tech, and also with regard to just understanding the way finance and the economy works, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's where I came in on that point, and I actually, and so it really captivated me up until the time we sort of transitioned into the conversation about Islam and religion, and I was captivated by that as well, but at a certain point, I just had to go. I had some other things I need to do, but it was definitely something very enjoyable to listen to, right? Even if I didn't agree with everything that I was hearing.
Well, his first claim that I kind of challenged him on, and it was sent to me from a listener to, um, perhaps to bring up with him, was his claim that Islam had somehow paved the way for colonialism to exploit Africa. And I was reading off some tweets of his, and he didn't seem to know that Islam actually permeated through Africa. At least in the tweet, he didn't understand that
Yeah.
that fact. But I think he was more. I think he did concede in the exchange with him that Muslims are. We didn't expand into Africa by the sword. It was through diffusion, through an osmosis of sorts, where a lot of different exchanges through business, commerce, other human interaction helped Islam come into Africa. Now, whether or not the Europeans used that in some way to gain a foothold over the course of a number of centuries, that I just don't see how he connected the dots over there. And a lot of it was that after the show, me and Mort were discussing, was that a lot of his thoughts and ideas are scattered, and there's no connected logic to it. There's no premises to it. There's no inherent truth. It's more, if there is a premise, it's more along the lines of tribalism and more towards my race is what I need to look after, and everything else I'll figure out after that. It's kind of like we have to kind of build our Black nation through better economics, better investments, basically build that structure up. But let's put aside the nationalism aspect. I think my thing, what I would always discuss privately, because if I discuss this in public, people would kill me because I'm not African American or Black, but rather people just don't want to hear a Indian who lives in the suburbs talk about it, even if it's right. So, and something I would tell these guys was that the basic building block of the Black family is broken in America. The basic Lego piece, where there's the father figure, is missing. There's broken families, and men are growing up not understanding the meaning of what family is, and to be a caretaker of his family, to pass on the knowledge, whatever little knowledge he had, so that the next generation gets a little bit more smarter. So I wanted your thoughts on that in terms of solving the Black problem in America specifically. Yes, there is Black and colored related issues that are happening to various other ethnicities all across the world, whether it's in Brazil, India, China. Yes, we understand the colorism problem, but let's talk about the Black problem and why it is that the Black family is so
focused on.
I think definitely. I definitely want to answer that question, but on the lead up to that, I do think there are some important points to make about his thinking, and I guess you would say the sort of gaps in his thinking with respect to Africa, with respect to colonialism, with respect to Islam's contribution to, I guess you would say, the destabilization or the dismantling of African unity, et cetera, et cetera. And clearly, these things like religion, race history are clearly his Achilles heels, right? And that came out to me in the during the episode, and that's when I started to comment myself, and I was texting Maheen during the episode, so fundamentally, I guess one of the first places I think it's important to start with regard to the colonialism in general, right? European colonialism wasn't the first colonialism, right? It just, of course, happens to be the most pervasive, the ones we know the best about, but people have always conquered other people. They've sort of taken over different people's, territories. And this has been the way for most of human history. And the Europeans, like so many other peoples, they were doing similar to what everyone else was doing. They just happened to have to do it better, right? At least around that time. And fundamentally, within Africa itself, African tribes took over other African tribes. So Africans took over other Africans' territories, right? So this idea, this sort of fiction of this trans-historical, universal African unity, like it itself is a fiction. It's never been the case where all of the people of the continent believe themselves to be part of I guess you say the same, that they also were a homogenous race, a homogenous culture, a homogenous religion, right? And so that in itself is one of the first problems, right, with the thinking about this issue is that sort of fictional thinking, and then secondly, the question of Islam spreading by the sword. Now, I think it's important for us to really be very try best to be a bit more precise about this, and there's no way no religion can spread by the sword. No religion can spread by the sword because you're talking about compelling people to have faith in something. Faith is an act of the heart, right? No one can be compelled to have faith, right? So I don't care if it's Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, whatever it may be, that nothing can be compelled, right? No religious beliefs can be compelled. In the Quran, la ikraha fi din, there's no compulsion in sort of religion, and that is not only with regard to Islam, but any. So it's stating a reality, but also saying that you should not even try to do so. Right now, Islam, Muslim rule spread by the sword, yes, in many places. Right, yeah, meaning that there was fighting involved. Right, Muslim rule, and there's a difference between Muslim rule and the spread of Islam. Muslims ruled as minorities in almost every single place that they conquered for much of the history. That the places when Muslims went into Persia didn't all of a sudden all become 100% Muslim, right? Exactly. Or a bunch of other places. It's that Muslims were the minorities, and it took centuries for all of these places to become Muslim majority lands, right? So I talking about the other issue. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Just to add to that, what you just said, brilliant point.
Yeah.
It is the institutions that the caliphate set up throughout the Persian Empire and the Egyptian regions, and as those institutions permeated into the people, like whether it's educational institutions, cultural institutions, what have you, and the justice system as well, those allowed and lent themselves to the people accepting Islam. And then there was the natural exchange of ideas and other social human interactions that helped Islam spread. It's not as simple as them trying to paint it as Islam spread through the sword or through Prophet Muhammad's version of Medina, and how recently, I don't know if you heard about Ayan Hirsi Ali coming on Rogan on his episode. She started spouting these two versions of the Prophet Muhammad, that there's a Meccan version that most of Muslims follow, and then there's the Medina version, the quote unquote the warlord version of him. And that she's saying that's the other part of Islam that we ignore.
Yeah, just real quickly though, I think just to highlight something, I think people need to realize this is a really important point, and just to hammer it, to dumb it down for some people, I think it's a really important part that when it comes to the taking over of lands, they established a government and like the masajids, and if you want to learn Islam, you came and you learned it. It wasn't like you had to force to become a Muslim. And through that process, of course, throughout centuries, they realized the benefits of being Muslims, right? Perhaps maybe, in terms of relating with people or commerce or just, a cultural, assimilation. They understood that. But in general, the Sahaba didn't go out and beg people to be Muslims. They didn't go out and say you must convert or you have to be this way. No, it was simply they wanted to establish the law of the land there, and that was that. And I think that was the important distinguishing factor, because there were many, and you can see that throughout the time, because you have many subcultures within different parts of the Muslim land that had their own religion. They ruled by their own books. They had their own autonomous regions in some ways, in different forms throughout the different various time periods of the Khilafah. But the point being is that they were allowed a certain degree of autonomy. And I think that's what most of the listeners probably are not familiar with. It wasn't like it happened overnight. Yeah. And the other thing I just wanted to quickly mention, as well as what Sim was talking about, was in regards to the way that people view Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam being a Medini period and a Mecca period. People forget this, that while he was in Mecca, the Quran was talking about Rome and Persia, and they were talking about Bilad al-Sham. So this was in the vision of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam even while he was in Mecca. So where's the distinction?
Yeah.
We don't see it.
It's a
That's
great
only in their
observation.
minds they see that, right? But for us from the very beginning, right, we knew that the ayah that came down that Islam will destroy everything else, meaning it will, as far as ideas, it came to disrupt all of that, right? Right? And so exactly. And so we know that this is during the time of Mecca when the Prophet ﷺ was just alone, a few hundred Sahabi with him. So there was never a, I guess my point saying is that there was never a change in character or objective or goal.
Right, and then I think another thing we need to consider as well is that it's the state of the world, right? And I think that was I actually found to be very interesting about the guest the other day, was that he seemed to understand this to an extent that that you can't really judge one particular time by another time necessarily according to different types of morality. So the Prophet ﷺ lived in the world where the presumption was war. It wasn't a presumption of peace, right? So even if the Sahaba were not interested as much in the people of the different lands to become Muslim, right? Which of course they would have liked that, but they, like the Prophet ﷺ taught them, that that's something that had to be done willfully. That if I didn't have a treaty with you, if I was unfamiliar with you, and you're not willing to basically like form some type of alliance with me, a strategic alliance, or pay tribute, right? Because that's the other option as well. Then we're at war, right? So becomes a necessity that as you expand your territory, there's much more. You're running into more and more competition, right? So either those people are going to send an emissary to you to ask, hey, let's have amicable relations, or they're going to attack you. So this is the type of world that they lived in. So even if people, use the word warlord, the people use that term, as if like for that time it was necessarily a negative thing. It didn't. The Prophet wasn't going around just killing people, right? Just because he wanted to. He had the power to do so, right? But we're just talking about, hey, listen, we're trying to protect our own, and so as we expand and we're now close to your borders, we have to make it clear. We have to make your intentions clear to us. Like, what is it, that you're going to be with us or you're going to be against us, right? And that's the same way that pretty much all governments operate and have operated even still today. They still operate that way, right? So of course, some governments can claim to be, we're neutral, peaceful, because of course they themselves are not powerful, right? But if they're powerful, right, then you see something different. As we know, the U.S. or Russia or other countries like that, China, Israelis, that you're going to find a different type of relationship with those surrounding them.
Now, do you another thing related to that time and period is another question that can be asked, and I think one of our listeners is asking in the chat. Zaki asked about the Arab slave trade in Africa. Was there any sort of slave trade, particularly targeting Black people from Africa, as opposed to other nations? Because we all understand that slavery was a part of that world. It didn't get abolished.
International law of the time,
it existed as an institution, but did you know of evidences where the Arabs or Muslims in general participated in the active slave trade of Black people from Africa?
Well, listen, I think I'm going to answer that question, but I think that we need to take a step back, because this is where others actually, they position themselves as having the moral high ground against Muslims, because fundamentally what this question suggests, from the very beginning, is that slavery is universally evil, is totally immoral, and it can never be rationalized and justified under any circumstance, right? And if that is the case, then those who practiced slavery in the past, that they themselves were immoral people, and they should have known better they weren't evolved enough or as evolved as we are today, right, to know better, and they should have known better, right? So anyone today actually saying or believing that there could possibly be a rational basis for slavery being justified, then that individual is pretty much an immoral person. Right? But of course, I think that we need to push back against that and challenge that first and foremost. But okay, back to the question. Do we see this happen in the Muslim world? Prior to the European transatlantic slave trade, you don't see this as a universal development. Right? You don't see this development, and so if anything, you can. There are indications in certain parts of the Muslim world, like Egypt and other areas, that this became, something that was very attractive. The idea of enslaving only Africans or dark-skinned people became attractive to Muslims as well. Prior to that, you don't see this. It's never institutionalized. You may find, for instance, in 9th century Iraq, there was something called the Zunj revolts, right? And this was these East African slaves who had revolted against their masters because of poor working conditions, et cetera, et cetera. And this went on for some time. There was a revolt there in Iraq, right? But outside of that, you don't find like a general policy throughout the Muslim world that says that only Black people can be slaves. If anything, during the latter years of the Turkish Empire, most of their slaves were Russian. They're Circassian slaves, right? So you did have some African slaves, Black slaves in Turkey and the Kul Haram, that particular arrangement, and some of them were the elite slaves, and they were eunuchs. You did have that in the Turkish Empire, but the Turks never said that only Black people can be slaves. Again, most of their slaves were coming from Russia, right? So that has never been like a policy of Muslims, but Muslims were influenced by that particular policy. But I personally believe that most of the evidence indicates that those ideas originate from the European Enlightenment era and the period of the colonial period. And so certain Muslim scholars were even influenced by the idea that slaves, or the default color of slaves, was brown, right? So you do find that mentioned by certain scholars.
Yeah, I just a real quick thought. I think an interesting point too, from the seed of the Prophet ﷺ, we can also see that there were certain Sahabi that were also used to be slaves. For example, Salman al-Farsi, Suhaib al-Rumi, right? These were people who were non-Arab, non-Black, but they were also known as slaves, right? So we see that it's not a slavery based on the color of one's skin. Right. It may be based on war. It could be based on, or even indentured servantry. It could be for all sorts of reasons, right? But I think we confuse that with, I think people automatically
associated with
with chattel slavery,
with the U.S.
Right? Where basically, that's it. You're locked up, you branded, and you're mistreated, and that's it. You die a slave. You're a slave for the rest of your life. And whereas, I think there's a strict difference between the way we viewed it and the modern era views.
Right. And I'll add to that here, because I don't want people to miss the point that I was trying to make earlier about the certain situations where slavery makes sense, right? And so again, that's difficult for people to say today. So I can say, because I'm kind of used to controversy, I guess. I can sort of get away with it, but in certain regards, it makes sense. Now, people historically, the ways you become a slave, it may be because of debt. You're indebted to someone, and then you submit your services to another person because of debts you owe to them. It may be subsistence slavery, where you're starving to death and you go to someone who owns land, owns farms, say, listen, I'll work your land if you just give me some food. Other ways, sometimes it's kidnap. Sometimes it was, just the most common way apparently is through the ending of losing a war, captivity, right? Through war, becoming a POW, right? So Islam only validated that form of slavery, that you can become a slave as a POW, meaning that you came to my village trying to kill me and my people, or take me and my people captive, but you lost. You couldn't do it, and I now have the upper hand over you. And your punishment, could be I could just kill you. I can set you free. I can demand a ransom from your family, right, to buy your freedom, or I can make you into my slave. So me, that is a rational sort of, that itself a rational reason for enslavement, right? In that particular situation, that okay, what was your crime? Your crime was attempted murder. Your time was attempted kidnap. Your crime was attempted destruction of property, right? And so you came to my area, that you yourself came to do to me what I would have done to you as well. And so and this is what I mean by positing or mentioning a potential rational basis for slavery, right? Not saying that we wanted to come back, but the idea that all forms of slavery or the ways that people become slaves are just simply all immoral and they should have never been allowed. That in itself is where we get ourselves into a trap, because we already accept the premise that, okay, slavery is immoral, and even though the Quran talks about et cetera, that it can never be justified. We need to ignore those verses in the Quran. We should ignore what the Prophet ﷺ did. He had owned slaves. We should ignore all of that, right? And just say that this is just abrogated, we reform Islam, et cetera, right? So yeah, there is it's really a lot, quite a bit that we really need to consider when we sort of take on people who actually have these ideas about blackness, about Arabness, even about Muslim history. And I think that this is typical among the Pan-Africans, in that they see Christianity and Islam as both colonizing religions, and both those religions are responsible for destroying Black civilization, destroying Black culture, right? But again, the problem is that they think that Black culture and Black civilization has always been one thing, right? Historically, that Blacks have always been united. Blacks have always seen themselves as homogeneously a homogenous group, right? That we belong to the same tribes and the same mother, et cetera, right? And everyone else, comes from somewhere else. And then we add on top of this, which is also interesting, is that the Pan-Africanists, their definition of Blackness, in their attempt to actually flee from whiteness, let's say, or anything else that's not Black, they actually embrace the definition of Blackness given to them by white people. That our understandings of who we are actually was given to us by white people themselves. Even whiteness is a social construct. That whiteness was created, Blackness was created, and both of those ideas were created by the same people, right? But so fundamentally what we do is that we think, okay, that anyone who has any amount of African blood is African, right? And that itself means that there's a certain type of solidarity, a certain type of assumption, or a certain type of thinking that everyone is supposed to have, right? And if we don't have that same type of consciousness, then we're not truly Black, right? So I sort of coming back to Sim's original question, about the issue of the Black family, et cetera, things like that. But I did want to get these things out the way because they relate to the previous interview. So when you believe, first and foremost, that again, that the Arabs themselves were a white race, and you believe that Blacks were a unified race, you're already beginning with two false premises that makes all of your other conclusions to be pretty much fallacious.
Shaykh Abdullah, I had a question. I don't know if Shaykh Amr even caught this as a listener on that show. I could tell that Uncle Hotep Jesus was a little uncomfortable when we first broached the topic of religion. I remember asking a question about because he had said something previously that, well, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity are pretty much the same.
Yeah.
They're all Abrahamic, and then we have no problem with that because we believe that whatever they believe, their chematology is like some kind of is the source for all that. And I've talked to some chematologists before, and I think that my understanding is a lot of these Pan-Africanists have this chematology, this African religion kind of thing. And so I think every time I hear it, I'm thinking about well, we know in Islam that every nation received a messenger, right? Can we come to some kind of common ground with them based upon that? I didn't bring it up on the show because I wasn't sure. And it seemed like he he wasn't expecting a theological discussion there. That's the vibe I got. So I didn't really push it. But is that something we can kind of come to some kind of common ground with? Because that's when I speak to chematologists in real life, like they'll tell me this, and I'll be like, well, listen, I don't necessarily have a problem fundamentally with that idea, because if every nation received a messenger, then who's to say that maybe that could explain why what you're seeing in your beliefs, you find it in the Quran or the Bible, and it correlates. That might explain things. I just want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would say, and I know, I guess maybe you want others to chime in as well, but this particular question directly is related to the question of what is the source of your morality? What's the source of, I guess you'd say, your sense of history of or what we would call epistemology. So it's if you claim that some particular book or some particular tradition is the source of your truth, right? Your moral truth, right? Then someone else says that, okay, well, I don't accept that as a source of mine, right? Then you have to defend your sources, right? And that's really where we need to be starting with most of these type of discussions, you see, because someone say, well, okay, I believe in this. Okay, well, how authentic is that source? How strong are the sources, or how strong are the claims, right? What's the basis of those claims, and how scientific perhaps even are those things, right? So often we get into disagreements with people because we're not really going to the root of the issue, getting to the meat of it. We have to really start there. But like I said, I also noticed that he didn't really seem to be interested in having a religious conversation. But he did say, he said that I try to keep it to myself. He talked about how he believed in reincarnation, and in traditional, sort of Black religions, I guess perhaps the animist sort of ideas and idolatrous ideas among the Africans. But I would assume that his assumption is that because it was the original religion, at least he believes that these were the original religion of the people, then it must be correct, right? So if it's older, if Islam came later, then that is what we need to be embracing, is what was there before Islam, right? So that in itself, is something that could be a topic of discussion. Of course, everyone else is always welcome.
I mean, I definitely think that you're right in the sense that I think that they also believe that there's a kind of interesting twist here too, because they believe that since this narrative that Arabs and colonizers came in and stole information, and part of that is true, meaning out of libraries in certain areas, like in certain parts of Africa, that they no longer want to share that information to the public. So like when they talk about religion and their spirituality, they believe that it's only for certain types of individuals who are like-minded or the same color or race or tribe, if you may. And so they don't feel like discussing these things in public for fear that it will then be exploited once again. Like there's a lot of, I don't want to say.
It doesn't make sense to me because look, if we were to do a battle of the races in America, let's not talk about the rest of the world, white people would smash everyone. They have the most wealth, most weapons, power. If you wanted to make this a battle of the races where which race will come out on top, it's not even a question. It's
right, but
it's such a ridiculous premise because the entire idea that you're going to set up some kind of secret plan that you don't want to talk about in public.
No, not that. It's not that. If they believe that there's certain gifts that spirituality, like, so you know who will do this also? The Jews do, the Kabbalists. They will say, hey, you can't talk about Kabbalah until you're 40, right? They won't really, they do have certain practices where they be like the information is veiled because people aren't ready for this yet. Like, for example, he talks about telepathicism, right? Like basically having telepathy, right? Being able to go out and these kind of things. Now, if you tell a common person this, I'm not saying whether this is true or not. I'm just saying that these are kind of beliefs they have, And it would make sense to kind of keep that quiet, because if you go tell people that, they're going to say, hey, well, you need to go check yourself in, right? You know what I mean? Like, but here's, I think, the main point that I feel like maybe he didn't get. And I think this is what is a beautiful example of how Islam transpires beyond all of this. They want to unite around a color or race or tribe. And Islam came and said, we don't want anything to do with that. You can have your culture, you can have that, but the most important thing is our afterlife. Like the fact that you believe in like all of this you're talking about, color, race, all this stuff is temporary.
You can't control it. You can't control how you're born.
You can't control how you're born, how much money you're gonna have, what part of society you're in, if you're healthy or not. But what you can control is your afterlife.
Yeah.
That's why I mentioned to him. I told him straight up that we have an ideology that we are uniting behind, and you have something that is artificial. Like something. Who determines whether someone of mixed race is black or white? Who does that? Right. Many people in those respective races will say that person does not qualify as a black or a white person, Right. So these are like artificial characteristics to rally around. The most ancient or like reptilian way to rally around, people, because that's how we were the original sons of Adam, how they spread across the lands and they formed into their own nations and tribes. That's the original way. Now we've transcended that into a different type of people who are ideologically minded, whether you are Christian or Muslim or a secular neoliberal capitalist, what have you. You are an ideological person, and people are gravitating around each other around an idea. And the whole notion of race being the distinguishing feature between groups of people is almost primitive.
It's very superficial, yeah.
Yeah, no, but one other thing I also found to be very interesting was that he mentioned that, and this is true, I don't disagree with it, but it's interesting that he mentioned it, that unfortunately African Americans in America, they don't have the quote unquote safety net that some of us immigrants do, right? Or people in the Muslim community do. Now, I'm not saying, Lord knows that the Muslim community has all kinds of issues, right? In terms of corruption and racism, but to some degree, there is some bond and some community, meaning that wherever you go, like there's some way that you can feel like you belong to something and maybe have some type of assistance, or at least, some type of community. In that regards, I think that I think what they're looking for is to create that among their own people, right?
But it has to be around an ideology. Like right now, they have the most Black people are Christians in and around the city and Black neighborhoods. They're mostly Christian, but they don't. That Christianness is not producing that engine where it's getting them to rally around a central idea, because we know, as Muslims, we feel that Christianity is intellectually bankrupt. It has nothing to offer the world. I mean, it has some morals and guidelines that we can all, rally around. That's great, but it hasn't solved problems such as the problems that the African American community is facing, and so that's why he's seeing Muslims solving this problem among themselves. And my dad, he more than these guys know, we grew up in a gang infested neighborhood, and we had drive-bys and stuff, but there were, he had that support structure where there were common Muslims that rallied around each other, where they supported themselves out of it. He was exactly right about that, but it was based on a central theme that we all shared in common.
Yeah, this is actually where he lost me. Like when he shifted, well, not only the religious discussion, but especially when he shifted, I really was impressed listening to him early on in his presentation and his the way he was answering questions. Because I felt like this is an individual. He's empowered. He's self-interested. He's about trying to help his people. He's about going out and taking advantage of opportunities that are available to him, and he's encouraging others like himself to do the same, right? So I say, I was like, bro, really refreshing to see that, right? But then he shifted to sort of the victim the victim narrative, which is so common today. And I think that is an injustice done to African Americans. And of course, I know a lot of blacks who like to be seen as looked upon as victims. I'm not one of them, right? But and that's not to say that there's not, we haven't had victims historically, among our people, right? But the truth is that that what he said was a hyperbole. It was excessively exaggerated. There's no such thing as that not having a safety net. I mean, among African Americans, it's listen. About 21% of blacks fall within the category of poor, right? Which means that about 80% of us are between middle class and rich, right? Right. But that's not what we get in the media. That's not the image that everyone has in their mind. Everyone has in their mind that every black person is poor. Every black person is helpless. As a matter of fact, we're so helpless that we don't know what to do for ourselves. We don't know how to find our ways to the DMV to get an ID so we can go out and vote. We don't know how to search the internet to figure out how to go and get the vaccine. It's like, we just totally just aimless. We're just lost. And, I guess we have to include all of the black athletes among them, the black entertainers and Oprah too. Oprah has been well, right? So, and of course, Meghan Markle, I guess, it's just, super rich people, well off, and I'm just like, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous to me. I can't find anything more racist than that type of thinking, or assuming that every single black person, or at least the majority of us, we need your help, right? We need you to come and do something that we can't do for ourselves. Right.
It's basically saying that we know better than you do for yourself.
Right.
Exactly. You need a chaperone wherever you go. We have to guide you. So let me ask you this though. I have a question. So did you hear that portion where we were talking about reparations? Did you hear when that portion of the interview?
Not really.
Okay.
Not really, no.
So I think he generally believes that reparations should be in. It doesn't necessarily have to be maybe monetary, but it could be well, yes and no. But I mean. It could be in the form of taxes, or meaning like tax breaks or whatever it may be. What are your
companies paying for it?
Yeah.
He said some of these long HSBC.
Right. You talk about the banks. I did hear part of that.
Yeah.
Right. He doesn't want the government to pay. He's not interested in having the government pay anything. Rather, he believes that even banks have acknowledged their role in some of this financing of slave trades, whatever. Right. So they are willing, allegedly, they're willing to settle on amounts, and so therefore he believes that reparations should be paid for, I guess, either the descendants of slaves. What is your take on that as reparations? I mean, because I'll tell you why. Because I know a lot of times people use affirmative action, right? And I say, well, unfortunately, in my eyes, I mean, me being a non-black person, but I look at affirmative action as something that was created for black people, but it's not being, unfortunately, it's not used for black people.
I think, is the recipients of white women in America are the biggest recipients of affirmative action?
I don't know
right?
exactly who it is, but it's Mexicans, Asians, women, it's everyone but the people who are supposed to be intended towards. So, I mean, the numbers are astounding. I mean, if you look at it. But so I wanted to get your take on, like, how do you feel, number one, do you think reparations should be something, a conversation that should be had, and how does that look like for someone if you do believe that there's reparations?
Well, I generally try to avoid answering questions about reparations, but I'm going to say a few things here.
Yeah, Abdullah, you have off 2020. Okay, we just started 2021. You want to start off fresh?
No, listen, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at this point. It doesn't.
Make sure to put 20 seconds. So
I've already been outed as the black sheep among blacks anyway, right? So. It's I've gotten used to it, right? But it's only out of the love for my people that I go against the grain, right? And that's both with my people in terms of my race, and then also my people in terms of my religion. It's out of love, right, that I do that. Because I don't serve you well, but just by simply allowing you to fall off a cliff that I feel that you're about to fall off, right? So at any rate, one of the other reasons one of the main reasons, well, not one of the main reasons, but one of the reasons why I don't generally talk about reparations is because, if it ever was to be instituted, which I doubt it ever will be. But let's say if it would, I don't have a problem taking the check, right? I'll take the check, right? You give me a check, I'll take it, right? But the other thing is that the premise that reparations is based upon, as a Muslim, I found to be faulty, right? As a Muslim, right? Again, because the assumption is that slavery is enough reason for one to receive reparations, right? Meaning that slavery was the crime. The crime that was committed against blacks was slavery, right? And if I was to first and foremost say that slavery was a crime, then I would have to say that many of the people that I look up to historically were criminals, right? And of course, and one person I won't mention, and all of you probably know what to say, but I don't want to even sound disrespectful to even say that, But it relies upon first and foremost a false premise, that slavery is uncategorically a crime, right? And if that is the case, then it must be deemed to be good reason for reparations, right? For anyone who's a former slave, first and foremost. And then to extend that to now say the descendants of slave. If we actually accept this, that slavery is a crime, and if you have been criminalized or your ancestors have been brutalized or ever been enslaved, then you have the right to reparations. Then every single person on the planet can claim that, logically speaking, because I don't care who you are and where you come from, that someone in your past, in your family's bloodline, was a slave, right? At some point in history, right? They're either you were enslaver or they were slaves. So, or put it like this: all populations of the world were involved in the slave trade. They were involved in the practice of slavery, right? So, can Europeans go to Africa and then demand reparations from Africa because certain Europeans were there? If they discover if they can prove that their ancestors were enslaved in Africa, could the Russians then go to the Turks and say, "Hey, you guys enslaved our people"? The Circassians go and say, "You guys enslaved our people, and for that reason, you owe us reparations too," right? So I think it relies upon the wrong premise, right? It argues from it claims something to be a universally evil thing, even though everyone universally does not acknowledge it to be evil, right? To begin with, right? It's not proven to be a crime universally under all circumstances, right? So, but with regard to like if you were to accept the premise, okay, well, slavery was that's the part that was wrong. Then, yeah, I think it does make sense to say, well, since Wells Fargo or the Bank of America, they dealt in the slave trade and they profited off the slave trade, then they shouldn't be the ones who pay, right? It makes sense to me. So why not, right? And why not, tap into the super rich and get some money from them? They don't, they probably much of that money probably was made, unfairly somehow anyway. You could handle it that way too. It's the logical. It's the logical end, I guess you would say, of that type of thinking. But there's a lot more I can say about it, but I'll just limit that to there for now, and then but just allow you to go ahead and continue with whatever line of questioning that you have.
Shaykh Abdullah had mentioned 15 minutes ago that he wanted some of us to speak up. I think he's talking about Shaykh Amr, who said nothing this entire episode.
I'm just learning.
He said like 10 words total. So
I'm learning, man. I'm learning.
As a listener, what's your take on the Hotep Jesus episode? You weren't in the studio with us.
Yeah, no, I saw a majority of it. My personal opinion was, first and foremost, I think the first thing I noticed was his composure, which was really cool, as I think you mentioned too. The other thing I noticed about him is he had lots of information, but it wasn't very interconnected. The information he had was amazing. Even when he was talking about Bitcoin, it was some really, really cool stuff. It seemed like on the face value, and he was dropping a lot of information. But when it came to the point of Islam, and we're talking about, it reminded me of a conversation that you and me had a few nights ago, or like 2 weeks ago. Me and Sim, I was really, really interested in showing the Netflix documentary Or you don't mind me mentioning this?
Yeah,
right?
no,
Because
go
kind
ahead,
of like a
talk
personal
about
thing.
No, it's
And I
not
didn't ask you
personal at all.
about this. Yeah, no.
The
So
Britney Spears documentary.
no,
We're not talking about my underwear shit.
Yeah. 13th. Okay.
the 13th, right? So, information wise, I was really moved by it because it was kind of emotional, right? So, what Sim did, it was really late at night, and I was like half asleep. And then Sim, he was kind of breaking it down for me. And we went through this series of questioning, and it kind of gave me a good glimpse of how my research should actually be and how I have to relearn a lot of things. So I want to thank you for that. I know you don't like me thanking you, getting mushy on air.
I forgot about what I taught you.
Yeah. he just wants to hear it. That's all it is. No, so what we were talking about was you stopped the Netflix documentary, and Mort was asleep. He passed out. He was on the couch. And
That's typical.
And you said to me, okay, let's put a lot of this in perspective. Yes, there's a major issue with racism against Black people in America, even systemic, right? So you said, if there's going to be reparations and there's going to be, undoing all of this misery, whatever they think, is that going to change the experience of Black America? Is that going to uplift them? And the first thing I thought of was like a thought of Dhulumati ila nur, right? Is it going to lift them from the darkness that was built? And are they going to be brought to light? So I was like, what do you mean by that? You said, look, one of the things that was mentioned in the documentary was about the crack epidemic and fathers being taken away from homes. And the clause, the reason why it's called 13th is a clause in the 13th Amendment of slavery is not allowed with the exception if someone's imprisoned.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? So if someone's in prison, they can be treated like a slave, basically. That was the exemption, right? That was a clause within the 13th. So African American, especially men, were locked up for petty crimes and all of the, and then again, coming back to the crack epidemic and families and children being raised without their fathers, by design. But you said all of that we understand. And that's a horrible experience that Black America is going through. But what is going to solve the problem? Is giving money at the issue going to solve the problem? And you asked me a question that kind of made me think. You said, are Black people the only ones that have fatherless homes? Right? Statistically. You said, no, there's a lot of white people with fatherless homes, actually. And you said, statistically, there may be even more white people, percentage-wise, with fatherless homes. So is the problem itself just racism, or is it a bigger problem? And then you were mentioning that when people, they get out of that dilemma and that cycle, and you gave me examples like Floyd Mayweather, and you said there's many examples of good, but you said what the system actually prefers, and that's when you start talking about capitalism. What the system prefers is that when somebody gets out of that rut, they become like a Floyd Mayweather, where it's, I made the money, now I made it, rest of you guys couldn't make it, so you're haters, right? And then when you further explained, and this is the part that started making a little more sense to me, is it's not the Blackness, and if they acknowledge the Blackness as nice, and if they're nice to the Blackness, that's going to change everything, right? It's a systematic change that has to occur in order to value human life, and only Islam can offer that.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, it was a lengthy conversation. I kind of summarized.
Well, one of the main takeaways, so what was from that conversation was, yes, we see the problem with fatherless homes among the white people, but we don't see them all coalescing into neighborhoods where all the white people with fatherless homes are gravitating into a certain neighborhood. That
we'll see it on TV.
Yes.
Right. Well, can I offer one sort of critique, maybe, or maybe some pushback a little bit?
Yeah.
I think
pushback.
Yes. No. The reality is that that you're right. That there is I believe there's a problem in it on a community level. Of course, I can't deny that. Right. Even in a mindset, like there's certain. I mean, if you've been to any inner city area, sometimes there's some issues with mindset. But I think what some people will tell you is that because of the action of certain actions in the past and recent past, it forces people to live in certain communities, including things like redlining and things like that. That unofficially you had segregated cities that created these cultures, these subcultures within cities And when people grow up in these environments, they can't see beyond what's in front of them, right? So when you're allowed to have, when you live in for example, for the white family, if the father runs off, and the white kid traditionally, all his neighbors traditionally are the nuclear family, mother, father, or picket fence, whatever. Okay, he may get bad, everyone else, I'm the abnormal one, right? But everyone else around me has a dad, right? Whereas someone maybe from the urban community, in certain neighborhoods where it's been like this generationally because the fathers have been locked up, and we're talking about even the crack cocaine epidemic where people became crack dealers, where sometimes the CIA was involved in putting drugs in the ghettos, right? Things like that. When they see it, it's normal for them not to have someone around, right? In some ways, right? I mean, for them at least, or it's okay. It's not, maybe it's not all of them, but it's not like a thing where, I'm the oddball if that happens, right? So I think maybe it's hard to break that cycle. I don't know how.
But don't you think, Shaykh, wouldn't this all be associated with like the education system failing them? I mean, I feel like the failure is happening on multiple levels.
Yeah. So let's talk about education for a second.
Yeah.
We know, especially in Chicago, for example, that the dollar amount that goes into public school education versus suburbs like Naperville and like Inglewood,
it's a drop.
So how do you and teachers are uninterested? They have low quality teachers who want less pay.
Chicago public school teachers are using that school system to propel themselves towards better careers. If they join CPS, and they use it as a launch pad or a springboard to bigger and better things.
So my point is that now we're getting to see that there's multiple levels. Whereas when it's usually in the white suburban kid, it's one or two things, right? But you have a systemic cultural problem here. I mean, and not even from themselves, but because of the environment where they have to deal with, where it becomes that much more, it becomes tougher. Right. And I think that we can't lose sight of that as well, too. And that's why people talk about things like reparations, why they talk about.
No, of course.
And I think the important thing, I think, to highlight this, though, and I believe this, I don't think throwing money at a problem is going to solve it. It's not. It's a Band-Aid, right? I mean, you can throw money at anything, and it's not going to buy you happiness or knowledge, or it's not going to buy you wisdom.
Pleasure,
right? Temporary.
Sheikh Abdullah, can you briefly comment on it before I know you got to leave.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's quite a bit I can say here. I mean, and it's probably going to sound different than what you may hear from a lot of other people like who are Black, But and again, this is one of the reasons why, of course, I'm sort of on the outs with a lot of people, and it's because I refuse to embrace the idea that today is like yesterday, that we're still living in pre-60 years where Blacks are being denied the opportunity to vote and to work and to go to school, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? And so, yes, redlining was an issue, right? It was, and it had a major impact on some people's lives, not all people's lives, but some people's lives. And fundamentally, today, we don't have these issues. Now, the reason why I start this way is because what I will always try to do is try to put people back into the mindset of understanding basic human psychology, right? And so in particular, Abraham Lincoln set free the slaves, right? The whites who used to own these slaves, they felt that their property was being stripped from their hands, right? But then they were also being told that, you know what, after centuries of being indoctrinated into the idea that you are naturally superior to them and they are naturally inferior to you, that now we're going to give them the opportunity to become your equals. Now, how do you think you would react, right, to that? And I'm not trying to justify anything that happened since the very beginning, Jim Crow, et cetera, the Black codes. I'm not trying to justify any of those things, right? But I'm just saying that, how do you think that you would have reacted to that? That you now are sharing a country with a group of people that you once were in charge of, and you know how brutal you were to them, right? And now you want to give them an opportunity for them to grow and become prosperous and potentially get the upper hand on you, right? Right, and your greatest fear is that if they do get the upper hand, they're not going to be forgiving. They're going to do to you the same thing that you did for them, right? Did to them, right? So all of the struggles that blacks went through, right, since the beginning has a whole lot to do with that. Now, of course, I say that to say that once things started to shift, of course, a little bit past mid 20th century, shift back towards, I guess, a sense of equality, right? That fundamentally they're individuals, they're powerful people in society who still have a desire to keep us mentally there in the past, right? And they exploit those those things, and they want to make it sound as if that the only reason that black people are doing bad is because of the system, right? Mm-hmm. Right. No, that is not only because it's the system, it's because of culture, bad culture as well. But black people are affected by many of the same things that everyone else is affected by. The sexual revolution, right? That had disastrous effects on not only blacks but on everybody, right? That there are more unwed mothers today than there were in the early 20th century. Cool. Black when there was real racism. Back then, there was real racism. The families were still intact back then, right? For much of the 20th century until after the welfare system developed, right? And they started telling mothers that you really don't need to be married to that guy. As a matter of fact, if you do marry him, then we're going to take your check away from you, right? So disincentivizing marriage, et cetera, right? So yeah, that's a systemic issue, but poor whites were also affected by this type of thing, just not to the same degree, right? And then we have issues of culture within ourselves, like this culture of victimization that says that because that happened in the past, that even though I have opportunities today, that I'm not doing better because of what happened to my ancestors. And I'm saying, well, that doesn't make sense to me. That, okay, the obstacles that were in the way of your ancestors no longer exist today. So when people start talking about, okay, well, systemic racism and things like that, I'm not doubting that they're racist people, right, in society and in institutions. I'm not doubting that at all. But if every time a black person comes to me and starts to say, oh, you don't believe in systemic racism, you're a sellout, I say to them, well, tell me this, whether or not I believe in systemic racism, how is systemic racism keeping you from taking advantage of opportunities in front of you? What is it that you want to do better and empower yourself? And you tell me, what is it that's keeping you from doing it? And nobody can ever answer me and tell me that, okay, it's because when I go to the bank, and I try to get a loan, it's because I'm black, I can't get, no. Nobody can tell you that that's the only reason why you probably can't get a loan. You're not talking about maybe got bad credit, maybe, it could be multiple different factors, you see, so basically, so family, the breakdown of family is a problem, not only for black people, it's a problem for everybody. Yeah. It's a problem for everybody, but it affects us worse than other people, right? But that's one aspect of it. But we have to also put our own people to the fire, right? And say, listen, that you also have to be responsible, that you also have to promote a culture of education. You also have to promote a culture of entrepreneurship, et cetera, et cetera. And this is why, again, I appreciated the guy who was on the other day when I heard him talking that way at first. And I was like, oh yeah, this is really, I want to, when more of my people talking like this, they're real nice to see that, But then he sort of shifted it, and he's like, that you guys you have a way out, and then we don't have a way out. And I'm like, well,
I think there's a couple of keywords: accountability, and then like not playing in the victimhood. Right. So these are, I think, a couple of key things. And that's why I was originally intrigued by them, because I thought they were like this anti-victimhood thing. And I'm big on that. Even for Muslims, like, I'd say, oh, how, sometimes the Muslims fall in the trap of saying, oh, the Jews have done everything to us, the Zionists, right? And I hate that. I hate it the most. I mean, there's only 20 million of them. Stop.
No, what I wanted to say was just take a pause and think about which race the Americans actually gave some kind of restitution or
Native Americans.
And what are their conditions now?
Yeah, but Chinese also got them though.
Yeah,
Japanese did.
So when you look at the organized, the tribes, the reservations, that the Native Americans are in. It's just a horrible situation. It's just a wasteland, and when you go there,
a lot of that is what he's talking about. I mean, it's a cultural problem, meaning that they had opportunities, and they make money. Actually, it's a hierarchy. Like chiefs of these tribes are making money off the casinos, which bank in a lot of money. But at the same time, though, I cannot ignore the fact that the government also did plague them with alcoholism, right? I mean, like
that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So, but I think at some point, this is where me and Shaykh agree with on is that, you know, if a guy came and dropped 100 pounds of cocaine at my front desk, or at my door, right? I should have the common sense or the smartness not to go and deal that or to do it. Right.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. And it's similar to, I'm sorry to cut you off, but like it's similar to like, again, sort of this what's happening amongst Muslims too. Like, you know, you have these stories about, okay, the so-called imam who, I mean, it happens sometimes. You know, imams, he sort of exploits the sister, you know, they try to say that, you know, the sister, she didn't know that if you get invited to a hotel that something is expected of her, right? And then, you know, and so at the end of the day, the guy gets all the blame, you know, for, you understand? And so I'm just like, well, hold up, you know, what was she doing going to the hotel? What, you know, so we put all of this responsibility on this one person, this one side, right? So yeah, the conditions are bad, you know, and that individual should have never tempted me, right? But at the same time, I'm the one who got to eat the honey, right? You know, I said I make the choice to eat the honey, right? You know, I mean, they put the honey in front of me, but I did make a choice, right? You know,
common sense. You know, what I mean, like there's common sense that we tend to like just overlook in the name of victimhood, right? Because and this is also a ploy from the left that we want to put you into certain boxes. Right. Compartmentalize this, and so that way we can put you in different compartments and say, well, now this happened to you, you have X, Y, and Z now to complain about.
Right, exactly. And then the other thing is sometimes people the problem is that, okay, you didn't have loving parents, you know, that you grew up and you had loving parents. And somebody actually said this to me one time because I posted something about my parents and how they didn't, you know, raise me as a victim with the victim mentality. And so I said, no, that's not an excuse, because, and again, I'm not going to reveal, you know, personal things about my family, you know, my you know, close to me, but, you know, listen, we all have the same mother and father, right? You know, but people take different paths, right? And nobody's talking about, oh, the system made me do this. Okay, I lived under the same system. I lived under the same roof that you did, right? And why is it that I turned out one way and you turned out a different way, right? We all had the same opportunities, right? You know, we were tempted by a lot of the same things as well, right? You know, so it's tawfiq. Part of it's tawfiq from Allah, right? You know, but at the same time, this idea that anytime you can find someone to point the finger at to help you explain like why you didn't do as good as someone else, then, you know, you find a way out, you know. And I think that this is a big problem that we're living under right now. And now it's so bad that the rich people are like talking about they're oppressed. And they're like, what are you talking about? You just bought a $14 million mansion in California, you know, with the $50 million that you actually are worth, right? And then you talk about that your family cut your money off. I'm like, well, you got too much money to begin with. It's like, well, why you need more? Or how you a victim, right?
First world problems, right?
That's what that is.
Yeah.
So, anyways,
Shaykh, I know you got to run, but thank you so much for joining us. You are one of the few scholars from Zaytuna who hasn't canceled us. Look, man. One of the things about our show is that we sometimes we'll say how we feel about it, whether it is even against some of the groups and institutions and places that we graduated from. Not necessarily graduated. I didn't graduate from anywhere, but benefited from. We'll critique that, and sometimes we happen to disagree with something, and some people cancel us. I don't want to mention any names, but. My deepest apologies to those who have been offended by any words of mine in the past. They
not forgiven.
No, you will likely be offended again in the future if you give me a second chance.
So
please.
This is his way of saying, no, sorry if anything happens to you now. We apologize ahead of time.
Shaykh, hopefully we can get you back on, because unfortunately, I think we have a Nation of Islam guy in the text who's like saying Shaykh Hamid doesn't provide any real solutions for black
Yeah,
people.
that's okay.
So maybe we can get you on a later time. We can compare the Nation of Islam and, by the way, who killed Malcolm X compared to Sunni Islam. All right.
Thank you
Good to see you
again.
again. Take care.
Appreciate it.
What a gentleman.
Listeners,
time.
the show is still continuing. Don't jump off.
Don't leave.
Yeah.
All you
We gotta
50
talk
people.
Meghan about Meghan.
Meghan and Prince
I
Harry.
think, speaking of victimhood,
Meghan and Harry, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Where's your mind at?
Harry, Meghan.
They said Megan is Harry.
Oh, you thought Meghan is Harry. Meghan is not.
Well, can we just call
Why
her Harry,
would
Meghan?
you?
Maybe she's Daisy. I don't know.
She's
Oh,
Joking. I was joking.
Wow. Is that a misogynist comment?
No,
that
it's a
Shaykh made?
Daisy comment.
You're canceled.
Bro, I am Harry too.
You are
Daisies are known to be
canceled.
Harry. Where are you hiding, Sid?
I can't believe your chef made a joke about Desi girls.
What are you talking about, bro? I'm
Wow.
Daisy too. I'm Harry's.
Why couldn't you just say Italian girls, bro?
Fine, Italian girls. That's the new Daisy. Fine, Italian girls.
There's Italian girls.
Oh,
decent.
my
Anyways,
fault, Sharon
so-
Poole. You keep saying Sunni Islam, so I'm assuming that you meant that you're a Nation of Islam. So what do you? So what kind? Real quickly, Taryn, what version of Islam then? If it's not Sunni, that's going to help the black people. Is it Shia Islam?
No, I think he's saying he's Sunni.
No.
Yeah.
He keeps saying Sunni Islam is done for black people. Or
Really?
something.
Where? Where does it say that?
Yeah, if you, I've been seeing his comments up there.
Don't give him so much.
Yeah,
attention.
chef. Morty,
Yeah,
is it
Sunni
really
Islam is dead in the
that
black community?
Morty? Is it really that important that we?
No,
we
I
go
just want to
through?
know. I just want to know because I'm.
Hey, he
You
just
know?
wants to know.
Oh,
You're
okay.
rude. This is a Terrence
Well, he's
fella.
Sunni. Well, I don't want to call out somebody who wasn't there. I got to correct myself.
Yeah, geez, let him live in this
Yeah,
moment.
let me make a correction.
Taryn, well, can you send me your comments via email at
No, how
info
about can you put the
info-
link to join in?
info@themadroomlooks.com?
Drop-
You want to invite him on the show right now?
Why not? I mean,
What
if
if-
you want to have the
What if
conversation,
he's what if
Taryn,
he's
this is
coo-
your big break.
what if he's
This is your
cuckoo
big break to get in the
what if he's
list.
cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs?
He said he's
well,
Sunni.
then we can cancel.
We
it.
just
He said
owned
he's,
it.
he said he's Sunni.
All right, hey Taryn, you ready to come on the show? Go ahead.
I don't know
let's
if he
see.
wants to come on, but
All
anyway.
right.
Anyway, but look.
No. You want to talk to Taryn? Let's
No,
talk
I'm
to Taryn.
saying,
Talk to
I'm saying
Taryn.
we have to post the link. I don't know
Taryn
if
is
he-
popular
no,
now. Taryn,
Yeah.
we've
But
met your
yeah,
name
a bunch of
20
random
times.
people might join in. So you gotta,
It's okay.
Yeah, but
Well, we
he
can
has
allow.
a
So,
filter. This is only for Taryn, nobody else.
yeah, it's only for Taryn. Anyone else that dials in, we're canceling you out on the spot. Yeah, but I can't believe you made that joke though. You honestly want to cancel you now. I have to distance myself.
No
from you.
problem. No problem.
I have to distance myself
No
from
problem.
you because now you just basically said that all Indo-Pac Asian women are hairy.
Oh well, that's not what I meant. But I'm Daisy. I'm Indo-Pac, so whatever.
Are you a woman?
Huh? Anyways, so
Do you identify as a woman, Shaykh?
hold on 1 second. Okay,
Taryn has declined your invitation. He said, but I can't right now.
Okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
that's
Well, I
Well,
I
we offered. We did not silence you.
yeah. So just if you are
I hate
not a
Terrence.
Nation of Islam, I apologize for calling you NOI. But it's like maybe he's reading along. It sounds very NOI, so I apologize. So I didn't mean to.
wow, Mort just apologized.
Yeah, I mean I will when I'm
I
wrong.
just very rarely hear that. That's awesome.
Yeah,
no,
I'm
it's
very, I'm
nice
very
to
rarely
witness
wrong.
this, though. It's nice to witness you apologize. I love it.
Well, I'm very rarely wrong.
Mashallah.
Anyway, so
Very nice.
you guys watched this interview?
I
Yeah.
watched. I honestly watched right until Harry came in, and then I'm like, yo, this is boring, bro.
It's not
I'm
about boring. Okay, I want your take on this, your take on this, and then your
Uh-huh.
take on this.
So
What's your
I'm going to
take on
say
all
this
this?
much. I'm not going to deny what happened to. I don't know what happened to. I can't comment. I wasn't there. But in my mind, like kind of what Shaykh was just talking about earlier. What is your common sense? This is a 500-plus-year-old institution that was responsible for pillaging, raping, murdering,
Yep.
taking over land, stealing stuff, and you think they're not going to be racist? What world are you living in?
Yeah.
Like you don't think
Yeah.
there's people? I mean, I'm sure maybe not the queen, but I'm sure you don't think there's people in there who want power, who who
Yeah.
respect their family lineages and their flags, and you actually have to. I think they call it curtsy, the queen, like even in private, like you have
Yeah,
to. Like,
what does that mean?
that means you gotta like
Bow. You
it's a
bend your
bow.
knee.
It's
Bend your
like
knee.
a weird kind of bow.
Oh, like in Problem Child. You know
Something
when
like
the
that, yeah.
twins. You remember that? Yeah.
Yeah, but
It's
basically
kind of
whenever-
like you do
I know
it
you're
after
kinda-
after the play finishes. That whole actors.
yeah,
they kinda-
it's like this. Like
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, but you like
this.
like
There you
Hey,
go.
can you not do that again, bro? Hey, don't make him do that again.
shh.
Let's
One
see.
leg goes in front of the other.
Well, they go to the- okay.
This one goes. Yeah,
Oh.
I think like they have to do a half, like a half knee.
This?
Yeah.
Okay. Like
And women in the cold dress like this.
Now do a little twirl.
Hey, can you stop that, please?
Why are you being so uncomfortable?
Because he's showing us his boxers now.
No,
There's no boxers. What are
Oh,
you
I saw
talking-
some green
Why are you
boxers.
looking so low?
Hey, Sheikh,
Hey.
keep your eyes up.
Yeah, stuck for a lush.
I'm supposed to lower my
What
gaze.
is going on with you today, Sheikh? You're insulting women and then you're
Looking at the
I-
Hey, today I feel like a rebel.
at a Bengali man's boxers.
I didn't take a nap after I got home from work, so I'm a little cuckoo for coke. So let me know about you. What's your take? Because I really want to know about your
I don't
take.
know.
He wasn't
The
finished
I
yet.
was just
on the
hoping you guys
interview.
would watch the clip and talk about it, and maybe I could talk about it afterwards.
Did you
No,
watch
because
it?
I
No,
watch
so-
other more important things.
No,
Is it
No.
wrong to say I was laughing a lot during the interview?
No, in reality, hold on, wait. Yeah, I don't know if it's wrong to say, but I'll be honest. I was kind of like, had it not been for work stuff I was doing, I had it in the background, like on an interview, and I was just listening to it. And honestly, I had a couple of these moments where I'm like, BS, whatever.
Yeah.
Who cares? Or, I mean, they're making such a big deal like about that. I'm like,
Yeah.
there are people out here dying, like this real like
Yeah.
racist stuff. And people are like actually being shot, killed, or like harmed in foreign countries for being a different color or skin or different whatever, being a mixed marriage. Your problem is that you couldn't get psychological help.
Yeah.
What? I mean, like, I'm not trying to downplay mental health.
Yeah.
I'm saying that, but that's like the reason why this whole shenanigans happened, because you're about to commit suicide. I just find it hard to believe that they couldn't call someone to the facility. Like, you know, I mean, I feel like they just want a way out.
Well, it seems like the royal family though does care about PR, right?
Yeah, but I mean, so can't you call someone? I don't see why they would be. I don't know the inner workings.
Right,
I don't see why they wouldn't be opposed to calling a private doctor to the setting.
Mm.
Right? I mean, I'm sure they have private doctors that come in for the queen and other people to avoid public eye. Right?
Yeah, she had COVID-19. Is she like 98 or something? And she
Bro.
still survived.
Dude, you know what they say, right?
Oh, she's
Like,
over 100, isn't she?
I don't know.
No.
There could be lizard people, as
80-something.
someone in the
No, I
chat
think 80
mentioned.
something. No, but what I'm saying though is
People
that
actually
no,
believe that.
I believe that Allah allows certain people to live longer.
Of
So their
course.
azab is
Of
worse.
course.
To die of what?
So their azab is like worse.
Well, has the Queen of England really done?
What has she done?
What is she seems like a
What is
sweet
she-
old lady.
She's a little sweet old lady.
I mean, look, she's not.
She has no power.
She doesn't have way. Yeah, she doesn't make any.
She's not
political
like that dude
decisions.
No,
Boris.
I don't think since her father's era, like the monarchy had any significant power.
No, they
in the
haven't.
UK.
It's just a face. It's
Yeah,
just a culture face.
It's just
So
a formality.
I just still
Is she
doesn't.
not-
I still can't make sense of why like people find this stuff so fascinating and they watch this crap, because it's just
It's whistleblowing on racism. A lot of it.
So what's interesting
That's
to
what
me?
interesting.
no, like what the whole royal family concept. Like, why is that so intriguing to people,
No, but what's interesting?
especially Americans?
No, what's interesting to me is that there was an American commentator, and their job was the title was Royal Watcher.
no.
Like their job is to watch the royal family. Like that's what they blog about, they talk about, they have a show about. Like, yeah, like in the world today in 2021, that's the only way you thought you could make money, by watching the royal.
No, I mean, look again, the royal family, Princess Diana. It just reminds me of the 90s. You know.
Yeah.
Well, what year did Diana get killed?
97, 97. Yeah.
She was with an
So,
Arab guy with him.
It's just so
Don't even fight
90s.
It was the curse of the Arabs.
Yeah, that dude was a pimp.
Yeah.
Yo,
He's you know,
was he like a practicing Muslim?
no. I mean, he was either. I mean,
Yeah, you know,
I
I
don't
mean,
know, I
like
don't know.
Yanya, wait, throw
apart
Yanya in there.
from
Yeah,
the
yeah.
apart
No,
from the zina and
he was
everything,
part of the Egyptian.
he could be a practicing Muslim, Yeshef. Be careful.
I didn't say he wasn't practicing Muslim.
You don't know his heart, Yeshef.
No, I think Dodo Fayed is partly related. They are offsprings. Like his grandparents, or one of them is from the Iranian royal family, from the Pahlavis.
Yeah.
So in Egypt, that when they,
She on it?
I thought he was Egyptian.
yeah, he is. But I'm saying
Okay.
one of the girls they married into,
Mm.
because that he comes from, I think, with the Egyptian royal family,
Bro, what a slap in
King-
the face.
King
to
Muhammad, I think, right, or whatever.
Yeah, I think he was part Egyptian party out there, right?
Bro, I bet they offed her, bro.
Yeah,
There's
something
no
like that.
there's no way, like
Yeah,
the
something like
insult that she sent towards the British royal family, Diana,
Like I left the
Especially-
print and I got groovy with somebody else.
and
How you like me
a
now?
former colonial colony.
Yeah.
And like she's all over TV doing it.
Yeah.
It's like a thumb in the face to the Brits. Maybe she did it on purpose too.
But you know what? I don't understand. Like this is kind of a demonstration of how women will never be happy. No, I'm
You're saying I was the one misogynist.
Listen.
Yo,
listen.
he just trumped.
Yeah.
He just bite into me.
I'm gonna qualify.
There's a competition now.
I'm gonna qualify it.
Okay, go on.
Everybody dreams to be married to a prince. Everybody wants to have a fairy tale wedding.
Yeah.
Right? Or be the princess. Right? You had all that. You were a duchess. You were this. You were that. Limelight, dresses, formalities. It wasn't enough. I'm not happy. I'm just not happy.
But you look at Charles, oh man.
Bro, listen.
Who could be happy with him?
Why was Melania with Trump?
Yeah, but sometimes.
Yeah, I'm saying power,
they need
wealth, money, all of that, dude. Right?
No. But Charles was the one who was cheating on her, wasn't he? With that ugly Duchess.
Camille.
Yeah, Camila Parker, your something.
Yeah.
Is that what happened, bro?
Yeah, and she was like disgusting.
None of this stuff, bro.
I don't know what he was thinking.
She had nothing. She had nothing on Diana, dude.
Yeah. No, I take it back because then I was trying to think like, oh, Diana just got bored and probably like, peace out, Princey.
Nah, like Charles was like, I remember this.
Camila Parker Bowles, I think.
Yeah, right.
Did he end up marrying her?
Yeah, he did.
Oh, that's the old witch next to him?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. You know, sometimes I get confused between Philip and
Philip is like Elizabeth's husband, right?
Yeah.
How that dude still alive? Isn't he like 200?
Yeah, but I think Charles and Philip are the same. I get confused sometimes.
I swear that dude was around during the Revolutionary War.
Bro, he looked like he could be on some like US dollar bill or something. Like he's that old. Like he looks that old. Like he has wooden teeth for sure.
Wooden teeth.
Like he
I never heard of that. He
probably has.
You know how fast wooden teeth would decay?
He's probably got like boxers they made in Bethlehem.
What else gonna say?
Hey, we should get Maliki on the show. Maliki, come on the show, man.
Maliki click
Yeah,
you. Maliki click
tell
you.
us about your newly married life.
Maliki click you.
Not wife, life.
Tell me about that Borta.
Yeah.
Oh, he married a Bengali girl, right?
Yeah. Kamalashish. Balashish.
Is he on a fish diet now or what?
It's like pescatarian.
Episcopalian? That's a sect of the Christians.
Yeah.
Now, pescatarian, it's the fish and vegetarian.
Yeah.
Can you really just want to point out what do you say? Just want to point out what?
The dope background that Sheikh Amr has. Old school signs are always good.
Oh,
That's Morty. That's Morty. Morty's doing.
Yeah.
Sim was a little worried about how that might turn out, but I thought it would be
Oh, it's good taste, man.
a reminder of good times.
It's good taste. Yeah.
When men could be men.
What was
I just remember every time we talk about men and masculinity, I think of these Old Spice commercials where where the guy on the horse, the what's the black guy, right, without the shirt, he's riding on a white horse. Yeah,
it's great, man.
Anyway, we should call it a night. Thank you all for joining. Oh, you got anything to
I
say?
thought we were talking about Clubhouse Wars.
So wait, let's just hit that real quick, dude.
Okay.
So thanks to a good friend of mine, Mahi. I think we're the one that invited me to the Clubhouse, right?
Yeah.
You gotta have your mic.
Yeah. So you were the one that invited me to Clubhouse. So so anyways, so I get in a Clubhouse and like I'm in part of these conversations, okay? And I'm like, some of them are cool, some are not. I see, by the way, my man Sheikh Joe Bradford's there. He's doing a book by Sheikh Rajab al-Hanbali. I mean, he's doing a book.
Is he?
Yeah. I mean, we had the conversation on Bitcoin, and it was kind of cool. But there's other conversations like Muslim Lounge about masculinity. And I walk into one Clubhouse group. I don't want to mention the name, but it says that men and women both welcome. But if sisters want to talk, they take priority. I'm thinking like in my head, bro, like we're talking about masculinity, bro, and women get priority to talk over men.
Oh my god!
Masculinity.
There was some fella in this, man. He was like, "You should be ashamed of yourself if you are on a panel of speakers and there's more men than women, and you ought to be ashamed of yourself if you're a man."
Yeah,
and
and you know the other thing is too, like they were having a talk about toxic masculinity, right? And so
I think it's a toxic femininity too.
Yeah,
in the same line. Yeah,
it was. But then that's why I want to talk about that, because when it came to talk about toxic femininity, it wasn't the same what me and you would.
You were listening to that.
Yeah, bro. I was in the conversation. I was trying to get in. By the way, I thank you, Sheikh Joe Bradford, in the other conversation for letting me ask if mahar was allowed to be paid in Bitcoin, because some people were interested in knowing that. Anyways, but so in this conversation about toxic femininity, the feminine problem, the thing that was feminine, like the toxic element of feminine, was, remember, Sim, it was something about how women can be jealous of each other or something like that. It was something of that nature, right? It was something completely irrelevant to what we thought it would be, right? When we talk about toxic masculinity, they usually talk about it in reference to the way men treat women, right? Like the way we are, like, you know, hyper, super testosterone loaded, right? Like, you know, aggressive, right? You know, whatever, not having emotions, right? But I look at, you know what toxic femininity to me, I feel like I wish I could have jumped on and just screamed this. But toxic, a clear example for me of toxic femininity is when your husband tells you he wants a second wife and you're jealous. He says he can't have a second wife.
Oh, there's much more easy examples
Because
than that.
you want him to choose between you and the sunnah. Right. I mean,
how about women who use their children as weapons?
Yeah.
Divorce.
Or how about you use the pum pum as a weapon?
Yeah.
Right. Like you say, I'm not going to give you the pum pum if you don't give me.
No, he said something. No, let's talk about real. He said using. This is a lot more.
Yeah, but that's real too. I mean, for a lot of men,
it is. It is.
Do you know how many men have complained?
Did you see what Gareth Bryant, my boy, posted about the one thing? There's that cartoon where, you know, dude's like, it's been like 2 weeks. He's like, I don't feel like it. And Gareth posted something like, "This is why y'all get cheated on."
Yeah, exactly. No, but that's my point. What I'm trying to say is that that's a real issue for many men.
I'm not saying it's not, bro.
How dare you downplay it?
He talked about something.
We have someone who
women who use their children,
who has talked about this on several occasions.
Ali, welcome.
Ali,
on
Twitter.
عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
جماعة. مرحب. هلا يا أبو يمن.
يمن كيف الحال؟ كل شيء تمام.
الحمد لله.
Yeah. So, Ali, what is your thoughts on toxic femininity? What is something that comes to mind right at the tip of your tongue when, in your experiences with the opposite gender throughout your various experiences in your life that you've often talked about on our show? Well, what's something that often toxic that is coming from the feminine side?
Like, you know, I think the biggest problem with toxic femininity is they don't even understand what it is to be feminine in the first place. There's no real definition of like what it is to be feminine. I mean, they're getting the narrative from these people that, you know, shave their heads and everything. They look like boys. I mean, you got to be feminine in the first place. You got to know the definition. We have to know definitions if we want to talk about things and we want to work to hash things out. You know, we have to, you know, we have to define what femininity is, and I think it's just lost in these days. Not a lot of women.
Speaking of that, you know, I saw it on my Snapchat. There was something about like some arts and crafting about like, you know, doing like trade secret. I don't know why I clicked on it, but some women like, I don't know, about removing like stains from your armpit or something, like some, I don't know. It was some Snapchat thing. Anyways, they had this. Listen, no,
what the heck are we talking about?
No, I'll tell you, I'm getting to the point.
No, I'm not saying you.
Okay, but it came. There was a female in there who said, "Hey, do you want to add some spice to your armpits?" And like, she dyes her armpit hairs pink, and this is feminine. Like, who? Where
did you see this?
On Snapchat, like something. You know how they have feeds that you can have something like, you know, if you look at like, I don't know.
Is this someone like notable?
No. It's just like if I go here, like, you know, these random
the feed. Okay,
yeah, the random feed. It was just right there, and she dyes her thing like yellow. I mean, pink. And why is that feminine? That is the most. If I saw a woman with hair,
here we go.
I mean, it's disgusting.
Was she French?
I don't know. She's American.
No, but you know what? I think that just the whole thing about toxic masculinity, toxic femininity, I think it's a false premise as built, right? When you say toxic masculinity, it's an attempt to get rid of an understanding, a traditional understanding of what masculinity is, right? So I don't even like that whole concept of toxic and then you preface it with masculinity with toxic and then toxic femininity. You know what I'm saying? It's
Bukhari here says you have to earn the pum-pum by doing chores.
FFS. That means for frick's sake.
So, Wakar, yes, you know, there are some female of that kind, you know, who will reward you of all the work that you've done year long on your birthday only. That's all you got.
That's toxic. That is absolutely toxic.
That's oppression, man.
Yeah. And that'll make a man take a second wife.
It's not like he said that's suppression.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I think that is grounds for something worse, and I think it's time for them to be dropped off.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Look, all I can say, I don't want to make a whole rant about this toxic stuff. I think what Shaykh Hamid highlighted is perfect. I think we need to have, instead of calling it toxic masculinity, we should start using the term prophetic masculinity.
That's it. Or just zalim, bro. Just don't be a zalim, whether you're a woman or a male. It don't matter.
It's all about controlling the frame.
Yeah.
Right? Because they've defined things in a certain frame and stuff. But
yeah,
but in general, Ali, are you on Clubhouse?
No, I've never even down.
You got to get an. You have an iPhone or no?
No, I don't have an iPhone.
Unfortunately, this stupid Clubhouse developer. Clubhouse, if you're listening, you're stupid. I mean, why would you start off with just making an app strictly for Apple? Like, there are more Android users, I believe, and like you could test for free on Android and not have to deal with the Apple.
That's crazy, man. That's not fair.
Yeah, I mean, Apple has a strict like approval policy, right, for applications. Anyways, hopefully soon, Clubhouse can be available for Android users. Yeah. It's a nice little way that you can get together. It's not a chat; it's a voice thing, but you can hear conversations on the go. It's a little bit like Discord, but less, less moving parts, right? There's no like verification. I mean, there's a verification button when you first originally sign up, but there's no like bots and this stuff and that stuff. It's just simply a conversation.
Have you seen Stereo before? How it works?
Yeah, but I didn't like Stereo because it's just like you have to keep creating the room. Why can't you just have a room?
Set one up. You have to set one up ahead of time.
No, I've tried. But as soon as you leave, you have to set it up again.
Anyway,
you have to actually set it on a date.
Oh, the point being is that I think Maheen just created the Mad Mamluks
Clubhouse group. Clubhouse. Yeah. So
can you create one for Stereo too?
No.
If a listener was willing to send me an iPad, I will join Clubhouse.
I'll let you use mine. I have one over there.
Dude, he wants a new one, bro. Relax.
One of our listeners will.
We share everything. Not including you, Shaykh Amr. You're out of the circle.
Good. That's fine. I don't mind.
If anybody is listening is on Clubhouse, so me and more admins of the Muslim podcasters group and the Mad Mamluks.
Is that supposed to be a private lock group?
No.
It is, bro.
No.
You got to fix that.
Really?
Yeah, that's why no one can join it. That's why all just us five all the time.
This is hilarious.
Wait, hang on.
This is so funny.
Our friend Martin's saying that you don't need to.
Apple?
He's saying you don't need.
You have the app?
You have that app called House Club for Android.
Oh, thank you.
Wait, so they share the same.
Does that pull information from Clubhouse?
Yeah, because if it's a different platform, that's not what we're talking about.
Martin Van E. I like that's my Dutch brother.
We want Android and Apple people on the same platform.
Hey, is the Van like a bin ibn in Dutch? Is it Dutch? No, Deutsch is German. Deutschland.
No, bro.
Dutch, yeah.
No, Deutschland is Germany.
Yeah,
and Deutsch is German.
But he's from Netherlands.
Yeah, he's definitely Dutch.
He's Dutch.
That's why I said Dutch.
That's what I'm saying.
I said Dutch.
He didn't say Deutsch.
Anyways, okay, we're getting off topic. Anyways, okay. So, Malik, anything you want to say about the episode that we had recently? Any comments that before we kind of wind this one down? I know you're arguing with somebody in the text about, just talking about issues about reparations and anything you just want to make a comment on, or you just want to get off your chest.
I mean, here's the thing. I got lots to say, but I'll just wrap it up and summarize. I mean, at the end of the day, people can say, "Well, we want solutions. We want solutions." Well, the solutions begin on the ground level on shows like this, and in our communities, and in our houses, and it all starts with us, how we are to ourselves, and how we try to build with others that are like-minded. And like I said in the comments, 400 years of oppression is not going to be solved within an episode of the Mad Mamluks. We all have to take responsibility for ourselves in our houses, in our communities. Yeah. So I have a lot more to say, but that's
man. I mean, again, it's such a complex issue, and it's so easy to get tripped up on, where you just say the wrong thing and people just murder you. They'll take I'm sure there's going to clip that they're going to make from some segment in this episode that we had.
Oh, I can already think of 10.
That's why I stayed quiet.
No, you spoke your mind too.
Amr stayed quiet.
I didn't say nothing about black people.
Shaykh Amr,
Shaykh Amr was talking about Harry Meghan. Remember?
Y'all can do whatever to me. You can't kill me.
Attacked
the time to kill me was when I was in grade school.
No,
it's over now.
You attacked the black woman called her Harry, and you talk about black people's issues not being black. You guys are both canceled. Misogynist, racist.
Might click, bro. It's always good seeing
just wait till Australian Twitter wakes up.
Yeah,
Yes.
Always check out my-
Sahar Dumbledore.
Rising from the
Sahara?
Sahara.
Oh, Sahara. Yeah. Oh, Sahara. Listen, I don't know who
Sahara.
that person is, but dude, honestly, stop trying so hard. Just stop listening to us. Just go
No,
away.
no, let her listen. She's a
No,
big
no, no,
fan.
no. I'm saying,
Listen,
listen.
big
I'm
fan.
saying
We need the
listen.
numbers, bro.
Look, I don't care about numbers. Listen, bottom line is this. Here,
Just
if you're
hit like.
annoyed, no. Here's what I don't understand. If I'm I'm annoyed by certain people, right? I don't want to mention certain podcasts out there. I don't listen to them. I could care less. I don't know what's happening, right? I'm not going to listen to somebody that I don't like and I don't give a crap about.
But
right?
Morty, we need like a villain too, right? Like there's a protagonist and antagonist within every story, right? Like the major YouTubers you see out there, right? You have the Muhammad Hijab and what's his other name? A plus and
Yes,
A plus
so
and
wait,
all these other people.
wait.
They have their arch villains. We need an arch villain too, Morty.
Wait
Come
a minute,
on.
Wait a
No,
minute.
we don't.
Wait a
This
minute.
is not
wait-
DZ Comics.
No, hold on. No, he's right. But the thing is this. I am gonna make my shots in this comment here. If she was a man, I would take it more seriously. But right now, I just don't want to. I'm not gonna fight with a woman.
Why
It's
not?
It's not worth my time.
Bro, it's equal opportunity these days.
I don't believe in that. So they might. I mean, I'm not gonna treat a woman like a man. Because if I'm going after a man, I'm gonna hurt somebody's feelings, somebody's jism. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? And
The armpit hair pink. That's
yeah,
you know.
you know what I mean? Like, I'm not
that's
gonna
what
treat my mama told me not to treat a woman like a man. And I'm not gonna treat a woman.
So you're not taking your cue from that one hip hop world star video on the bus. It's like, yo, be treated like a man. I'm gonna treat you like a man.
Yo,
I remember that.
Did you see her? The way he uppercut her.
But she came right back, dude.
Oh my god,
She came back from the dead,
dude.
bro.
Yo, she was like a walking dead. Yo, that's why I'm like, wow, she should be in boxing.
Dude, that uppercut was insane. And she took like a champ. She came back up the stairs and started fighting with
It
him.
was like a Street Fighter punch, like, whoa, like just go boom, like just hit him, bro.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
wow.
It was bad, bro. He
Can you
lifted
play
her
it
up.
for everybody?
Oh, you can. That kind.
No, don't play it. Don't play it. I'm joking.
Finish her. It was like
Okay.
that kind of thing. You know what
All
I mean?
right,
Like, she was
guys.
like, yeah.
We're at an hour and a half now.
Yeah.
Thank you all for joining the chat.
Maliki, click.
Maliki, always a pleasure.
Oh,
Let's
yeah,
catch
but
up soon, inshallah.
One of my villains is
Mashallah.
Islam critique. Screw you, a-hole.
All right, we'll see y'all next time. Assalamu alaikum.
Salam.
I can
Uh,
smell it.
Where are we? Shit got scared when that went on. Like, woo! He jumped, bro.
It sounds like a Halloween thing.
Shit. It's called the outro.
I don't know. I was trying to say it. I couldn't say it. I don't know how you guys did this one. I don't even know how.
I had the